Being spring, you expect the weather to be fickle, but this year has been particularly bad. The place I've been fishing a lot recently got about 6 or 7 inches on Monday. All the progress spring had been making disappeared seemingly overnight. However, by Friday, spring seemed to be in full swing. One of the things the snow had been covering up was acres and acres of cockleburrs. I think the snow was a lot prettier. That's not good. Gonna have to fix that when I get home. I got out early enough I could walk right on top of the snow. It was sure nice to just be carrying my snowshoes instead of wearing them. With the rising water, the place I've been fishing changes daily. One of the things that hasn't changed is the sheer amount of waterfowl. There's birds everywhere you look, and it seems like from their cries that they're super excited that spring is almost here. With the rising water levels, the location that the fish are hanging out changes almost daily. Took me a half hour or so to finally figure out where they were located today. But honestly, catching fish under changing circumstances is one of the things that keeps it interesting for me. Although the location of where the fish are hanging out changes, the quality of the fish has stayed consistently good. Got me. Not a bad little rainbow. I think you'll cook up just right. I've used up most of my salmon by now. Unlike some of my past fishing trips, I've decided to keep a few for the freezer. Today, one little run seemed to be producing almost all the fish that I caught. However, trying to land fish with 2 feet of overhanging snow presents a bit of a challenge. I rarely carry a net with me. So today, the fish either had to go for a walk, or else I would lean over on the snowbank and try and pull them up without falling in. This was a fair bit of a walk. I was actually kind of surprised that he stayed on the whole time. Eventually we reached a place where I could pull him into shore. Here you can see exactly where the fish were hanging out today. I'm not afraid to show this video because in 3 or 4 days all of this will be underwater and it won't matter until next year. Keep in mind, I'm condensing about 6 hours of fishing into a 10-minute video. Here I tried to horse him up rather than taking him on the long walk. After an hour or two, that run kind of petered out, so I moved back down to where I'd been fishing in the last video. You wouldn't hardly recognize it, but where all the weeds in the water are, that's where I was fishing from last week. These weeds posed a bit of a challenge trying to land the fish. Nothing will grab a hold of your line like old cockleburrs. Additionally, the fish really didn't like coming into this shallow water. It works much better when you have a deep spot in the water with a low sloping bank. I should have found a better place to land this one, but again, I figured I could just horse him in. I marked in my mind the exact spot where the last fish took my fly, and these next 2 fish came from exactly the same place. They really seem to have a place that they like, and there's not much anywhere else. This looked like a great fish to have for dinner tonight, so he ended up in a snowbank rather than being released back into the water. I'm not sure any self-respecting brown would take a big orange egg, but that's what these rainbows really seem to want. By this point, I had kept 3 fish, so now I was just fishing for fun. I'm actually going to let you go, so don't freak out. Unless you splash water on me. First of all, you're going the wrong way. You want to go that way. After a while, I figured my run had had a chance to rest for long enough, and so I headed back there. Within a few casts, I'd hooked into another one. With the melting snow, one of the things that had really changed is I no longer had this area to myself. Fishermen were coming out of the woodwork. I can't blame them. I'm just glad they don't know that it's good much earlier than now. That guy liked the egg-sucking leech, apparently. See you later. After a little while, the other fishermen had moved on. Still like the purple, huh? Repeated runs through the honey hole would produce an occasional fish. Like always, they seemed kinda cookie cutter. But when they're decent fish, cookie cutter's not too bad. Roped off. For some reason, I've had a lot more problems with fish breaking off in these last few trips than I usually have. From here on out, the secret seemed to be switching up flies, which the last fish had made me do. Fish aren't dumb, and after a little bit, they quickly learn which things to bite and not to bite. I also wonder if the released fish tell their buddies exactly what flies to avoid. After an hour or so, without any luck, I moved upstream just a little bit. No catch and release on that bad boy. I ran my camera through water just to see what was down below, and I think I have my answer as to why I kept losing flies. That's like a regular obstacle course. You look a little worse for the wear there. Aside from the bright orange egg, purple seemed to be the color of the day. By this point, there seemed to be more fishermen than fish, so it was time to call it a day. This snow is perfect for keeping your freshly caught fish chilled until you're ready to leave. This may be the last time for a few months that you see me loading my snowshoes into my truck. Surprisingly, none of these fish even had any eggs. I don't think the spawn has started yet. I cooked them using one of my favorite methods. Basically, a bunch of salt and a few eggs all mixed together. You cover the fish with this mixture. Just make sure everything's completely covered before you stick it in the oven. You bake them for 20 or 25 minutes. All that salt keeps the fish especially moist. You ought to give it a shot sometime. Let it cool for about 5 minutes and break the crust. Scrape off as much salt as you can, and then peel Most of the bones came out. Delicious.